Welcome to the Arcfluence Podcast, where we talk about how design impacts the way we live, work, and invest. I'm Nick Karakaian, your host, and with me, as always, are my two amazing co-hosts, Paul Fatkins and Nino Samardzic. This is episode 15, and we are going to be talking about Zone in Columbus. That's not right, is it, Paul?
Zone in is what they're calling their new zoning initiative.
Paul and I actually went to a city meeting about a month ago, and we are learning about all the new corridors that are being activated where zoning is being changed, and we're seeing a lot of new development. We're going to talk about all those different urban centers, urban core.
Yeah. I was a little disappointed, to be honest with you, because when you look at the map, you know, it's only about just the corridors.
It's about 2% of all of Columbus.
Or 5% or whatever. It's a very small percentage.
But I mean, it's connecting the city centers that are where we're seeing a lot of activity. And I think that's important.
Yeah.
And right now, like along a lot of these corridors, we're seeing 3 to 4 stories max.
Yeah.
Some of these are going up to 11 stories now.
Have you seen this map before?
No, this is the first time actually saying.
Yeah. So they've been talking about this change now for a while.
Well, they haven't had any major changes in zoning in Columbus in
70 years?
Yeah.
Wow.
So, but when you see this map, this is my question for you. Does it seem like they're doing enough? Because that was part of the feedback and part of my feedback too. It's like I looked at it, just doesn't seem like they're doing enough.
I think the response was well put in that this is a first step. And
that's probably what it is. That's probably they're trying to test that. You know how urban development is kind of almost like a living organism. So, but I know for sure that because I'm currently working in Grandview Heights, and Grandview Heights, it's really rising up. Yeah. I think it was like a warehouse district, something like that before. Oh, yeah.
The Grandview Yard.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then there's a new Aldi that's being built. So I have a 4-unit right over there. Yeah.
But that is like, I can tell you, that's exactly how it's matching. But it's a big city. But you're right, Paul. You definitely would like to see more corridor, at least to be continuous. You see, I see like a line that is being interrupted, and there is a little development there. Maybe they should be a little bit more brave.
Yeah. Well, and I think, like Nick said, they're doing this as a first step. Mm-hmm. Their primary thing that they were also pointing to was related to housing and the amount of variances that they have to put in and approve through their current system.
There were thousands.
Well, of course.
I mean, I would say
just in the corridors, thousands.
If nothing changed 70 years, and look at the development that is changing entire city upside down.
I would say about a third of our clients end up requesting variances for setbacks, parking, whatever.
It's
height
always something.
Restrictions.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's always something. Yeah.
And they typically approve it because they're like, yeah, this is really outdated and needs to be done. So
exactly.
Well, we talked about investment into neighborhoods and areas, right? If you have somebody willing to make that investment, of course the city's likely to improve it because approve it because it's an improvement to the area, which could spur other development around you.
Like we talked in our previous podcast about that building that was for Coast Guard or something like that. Yeah, same thing.
Yeah, I like how they color-coded these 4 different zones, and basically I'm looking here on my cheat sheet, and assuming that we meet certain affordable housing check marks, we can go up to 12 stories on at least the black corridor here, which is a significant portion of this.
So 12 stories will require.
Oh, this is what you're talking about, parking? Is that your first thought? What's your first thought?
So there's no parking requirement.
Yeah. Do you know their policy now on parking with the zone in? It's all market driven. They'll let you figure out the parking. Yeah. Whatever you want to do.
So on Parsons, there's some development going on, and even though they don't have to have a parking component, they're still providing parking, but it's not gonna satisfy every single unit that they're putting in. It's like the one I'm thinking of has like 83 units, and I think there's like
how people will then have to bump up to like a city transportation, public transportation.
Well, they've looked at other cities like Minneapolis, San Jose, and they've looked at utilization rates.
Okay.
And so a lot of times these parking lots are over designed based on the current zoning.
Mm-hmm.
So in other words, you have like a 50% utilization a majority of the time.
Utilization rate of the parking spaces.
Yeah, because you usually don't have full occupancy
100% of the time all year round.
And a lot of these buildings have some studio components or one-bedroom components. They're not families, right, necessarily.
And I can tell you one thing, garages, and especially open parking, break the tissue of the city, if I can say it that way, create this like a giant holes in a city's fabric.
Yeah.
And you lose that connection, you lose that quality of the street that is flanked by buildings and all these activities around the streets. Suddenly you have these like giant pockets with these just cars sitting there, and you're right, unless you have like a OSU game or something.
Yeah, exactly. So if we're solving our biggest problem, which is housing, the lack of housing, now once we start satisfying that need, the other problems will start becoming more of a priority, and they'll expose themselves.
They will.
So you're going to see, okay, well, hey, we need to park our cars. Well, what's the solution for that if we can't create more parking lots? Well, I guess future designs will incorporate more parking, but also how can we solve the existing problem?
So you have to use like a European samples, which is you will need like a very efficient like a public transportation, and the second you need to underground parking.
Of course, but think about it from a business standpoint. If you're investing in a place that hasn't really been developed, and now the city's trying to encourage you to create some development.
Yes.
So this is going to be the first step, right? So now we're going to get these buildings that might lack some parking. However, real estate's going to go up on that street. That land's going to become more valuable, and then future developments will have the money and these performas to be able to include parking in that design.
But it's not like there's zero, right?
No,
it's market driven. So there's always going to be some parking that's part of it. I think they said like they're looking at all these numbers, and they said like there's over 30,000 households in Columbus that they don't even own a car, right within the city of Columbus.
And since this is the corridors that we're focusing on first, public transportation, this infrastructure exists in most of these places already, so it can be improved upon.
I think it should be, because you know, as you can see, it's a pretty big scale. Another thing is encouraging the mixed use and to have most important or majority of the services within walking distance. So that's definitely going to also help to create like a small hub, small neighborhoods that is going to be pretty versatile. So you don't have to travel from A to B.
Exactly. And don't forget, if we're going to these max heights, we'll have 12 stories in some cases. There's a component of affordable housing we're going to have to satisfy. So this is going to be that community that I was talking about in a previous podcast. And
the only things I'll be like a coach, you know, this is all good. I love the directions they're going. The only things you have to keep in mind that you don't always have to be like because now they're saying it's such a high demand on dwelling, any kinds of dwelling versus public spaces, like and now they start like proposing having even dwelling on the first floor. Usually was the mixed use, and now you have to be careful, don't go far in that direction, because these people will need to buy groceries somewhere, have to have haircuts somewhere, need to have a restaurant somewhere.
Their argument was, at this point, we're so far behind with the housing market in Columbus that, I mean, they have to allow for some of that, because if they don't, we're never going to catch up.
No.
So we're already, thousands and hundreds of thousands behind units that we need.
And it goes back to my point as an investor. Like, we don't have the support to build a grocery store yet. We need to get the housing there, which will then demand those structures. And that future development will then inspire the rest.
And
that's true.
They were concerned about not only like the supply, but also like the cost as well. Because again, it's like economies of scale, right? So the more you have within the market, then your prices can be a little bit more moderated. They were looking at rent numbers. I forget what the percentage was for Columbus, but like the amount, which would be great for an investor, the amount of the increase for rent was like 10 times more than a city like Minneapolis.
Yeah, off the charts.
Yeah. But, and, if you're an investor, great, you're getting more money for your rent. But obviously, if you're a family, right, trying to move into this unit, I can't afford it. I can't afford to pay that.
Or you're just like how you calling that, like upcoming, the professionalist. I mean, you're still not making big numbers. It's gonna take at least 5 to 10 years to get there. So you have to encourage. So they have to have percentage of affordable housing.
And this is coupled with other programs to encourage more affordable housing.
Yes,
they reference some. It was interesting because they referenced some developments like around the area, right? And some of the vacancies were incredibly low, right? Yeah. So they're also making this point where it's like, well, obviously we still have people that can't afford the housing that we have.
They were making a joke about it, like affordable housing clearly someone can afford it because
it's full.
It's full.
It's not empty.
I know. Honestly,
people are paying the price.
Good things what they have on their disposal. They have a good data. At least I hope. And they should be able to have such a good data, if not use artificial intelligence and draw some charts and tendencies.
They've been working on this for years.
Yeah, so that's a good thing. They have a data and they have better understanding that we have, like how city is shaping.
And they're not just looking at our numbers in Columbus, but they're looking at all this future growth that's coming in that we continually reference, and they're also looking at other cities that have
best practices
that have gone through this, like Austin.
Yeah, exactly. Best practices that you can actually implement and maybe slightly modify based on local.
Yep.
And no, this is all good. I mean, just having in mind changing something that haven't changed for 70 years is a step in the right direction. So I'm seeing in this map these different colors. What is the UCR mean? UCRR, UCT, UGN1.
So there's Urban General 1, Urban General 2, Urban Center, and Urban Core. And these are all the different zones. And they basically said, like, they're updating the height restrictions, the number of stories.
Got it.
Some of the less, like, there's some areas there where it's like 35 feet is your maximum. And it's like...
Oh, no, 35 is like... almost across the board,
a blanket
for the entire unless you're in like one of these special overlays or something.
Got it.
Got a variance,
or you do a variance.
And which is the majority of the cases. But
so that's like a 3-4 story, something like that.
Yeah,
not 4,
35 feet,
three story. Yeah,
and then when we did our triplex to meet that 35 foot. We still had to lower so it's a partial submerged structure.
Because you're actually counting from the ground up, from the grade up. You don't counting from the basement up.
So really what that 35 means, it means a 2-story with an attic in most cases in Columbus. So now we're like 4 stories, 48 feet is kind of the minimum standard for these corridors. And it can go all the way up to 12 stories with a maximum of 150 feet. Yeah.
I mean, like for example, if you go down to Franklinton district, they have like probably over 100 and something feet dwelling there already. Yeah. The only problem is these are smaller units, but they are become so expensive now. They are so like a
because we need more housing.
Yeah. But again, I bet you they have a very low vacancy rate.
Yeah.
So that was the point they made. Somebody's affording these. Somebody's paying for them.
Yeah, they're building all around. Yeah. So they will not if they don't have feedback.
And we can always say, oh, those evil landlords. But the thing is like the labor, the building materials, all these costs to create these structures have increased.
It's a necessary thing. So you have to have private initiative in everything.
Their margins really aren't that much better than they used to be because the market's gotten more expensive.
And that's one of the podcasts, our affordable housing podcast. You have to have combination between government and then private investment, private sector.
Part of the things they also talked about at this meeting, I mean, the old code is so heavy on how they regulate the use and what they allow you to do. I mean, there's no flexibility.
That's why you have variances.
That's why you have all these variances. So the goal for this new zone in process that they've started with the corridors, they want to make everything more fair and equitable and give the designer and the investor flexibility.
And yes.
Yeah. Because if you don't have that flexibility to to respond to the market and respond to the conditions,
and the market changes, you're in trouble.
You are in trouble.
Yeah.
I mean,
or you're waiting a year to get approval.
Having 70 years to wait on something to change,
and that slows investment.
Yes.
It slows the growth of a city,
Yes.
and potentially, this is why we have dying cities.
Exactly, and creates the crisis because the city and the policies did not adjust to the current trends, and they're changing, especially in super growing city as Columbus. So this city is changing drastically.
Yeah, and I think also too is like we're creating a larger tax base, and so right now, listen, let's be honest, taxes in Ohio are kind of high for what Ohio is, right? It's a fairly affordable place to live compared to the rest of the country.
That's what I heard, yeah.
And we really can't go higher on our taxes, or we're going to be skewing higher than the national average. Yeah. So by adding a larger tax base with more units, we can keep taxes where they're at the very least, and still create more money to develop
basic math tells you that,
and now we can make our streets better, our roadways, our highways, our parks, etc.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it's very focused on the community and the impact to the community. So, like, it gives designers this flexibility, it gives investors this flexibility. But I mean, the goal at the end of the day is to have these more vibrant, energized communities where you have all this money and diversity and, you know, all this activity that's going on.
The one thing that I will say, like, just looking the example of the Grandview Heights, which is, I think, one of my bosses mentioned, it's actually the fastest growing neighborhood in a Columbus area. And what I'm actually seeing now, they have beautiful these streets, like with like almost like a boulevard kind of approach. Buildings I don't think exceeds like it's probably like a 4, maybe 5 stories. The only problems I'm seeing there is the lack of the amenities.
Yeah, because
there is so much dwelling.
Because affordability.
Yeah.
They have to make it work.
I know, but there is so much dwelling. We don't even have we have a Harbor House and another brewery next, but we're still needing more like a commercial stuff.
But that's typically what you see when development starts.
I know.
And then as it matures and things become more expensive, you'll start seeing
hopefully,
the amenities.
I'm already seeing one bank is being built, but like between my office and all the way to the Giant Eagle, that big Giant Eagle there is nothing else except dwelling, and some offices. So, which is fine. I like walking those streets, and you're still within walking distance. But there is a big gap of amenities, and in between there's not much thing happening.
And I do kind of want. I guess this is a little off topic, but like if you look at Ohio as a whole, like we're the 6th most populated state. There's a lot of people here.
Yeah,
and I really want to protect more of these parks and these things.
That's true.
And I think if densification and zoning, it makes a city more sustainable. It makes it more affordable. It also just when it's done right, we're better.
We preserved,
And not only are we doing more, but we're also preserving more.
Do you know that's
it's exponential.
Exactly, because and then you have a huge amount of unused built stock in a city, and you're building down on these green meadows. Yeah.
Have you heard the saying, if you want to go fast, go it alone, and if you want to go far, go together?
Yeah, that's exactly. And you're right on the point, Nick. You're right on the point. Yeah. I think that's why we have to invest in the cities.
I think that's a whole nother podcast, though, that we could almost do.
Yeah.
No, talking about land that's available to develop, because I think we're running out of those farmland development.
But if you look at the rest of the world, and listen, everybody has their problems and everybody has their victories, but the older nations of this planet have large city centers and protect outside of that.
Because there is still land in abundance in the United States.
Yes.
But we shouldn't take it for granted.
No.
So
it is a finite resource.
Exactly. We have to, I'm on board on that. And especially if you already have like a built stock, reuse it, recycle it.
Right.
So why not? No, I like the initiative.
Because also, if we're just starting over in new places, then the places that are older are going to be blighted and they're just going to be run down, and it's going to attract it's going to be problematic.
Mm-hmm.
And we've seen it over and over again.
Well, yeah. I mean, you need eyes on the street, right? You need members in the community active
and changes
in
the street dramatically.
Yeah, I mean, like even when I was in Chicago in the downtown area, like after 5, it started to become a ghost town because everybody left and went home to their suburban homes out in Oak Park and Wheaton and these other areas around the city.
But it might be, since I have a lot of this younger generation, what is that? What is after millennials? Y?
Z,
whatever it is.
Those Zers.
Yeah.
Zer. Yeah, exactly. they are not interested in the suburban area. They wanna experience the city. They wanna rent the apartments in the city. They want to be engaged.
Yeah. No, I actually like the mentality of the Zers. Yeah. They also want to make the world a better place. Like they're a lot of the folks that I'm calling to, that they have a purpose and they're feeling called to change things and make things better. And I think that's a good thing. I think they're also renting too much, and I think they need to buy.
They are renting too much. I think they're almost like I think there are positives and negatives of every generation.
Sure, I think they're going to find themselves wanting, because things are more expensive and they're not
changing rapidly, and they don't follow the current.
They're not investing.
But I think there's reasons why they're not investing.
Fair.
Because again, it goes back to the housing supply, right? Which is why they're one of the key things they're looking at in this zone-in thing. Because all these prices are so high, it's a barrier to entry for people.
Exactly, it is.
And so, that's why they're trying to make changes to code to allow for more flexibility. Because, you have people coming up in these different generations that have to rent. And that's why so many of them do, because they can't get into something.
Basically what you're saying, Paul, and I want everyone to kind of understand this, is that these changes in zoning that's going to help create more density is going to help lower the cost of inflation. Like, it's going to stabilize the economy, and to a certain degree too. Because when you
that is the hope.
Yeah, I mean, that we've seen it in other cities.
These are these best practices that and just rebalance the city and bring the importance of the city in dwelling in urban centers. That's very important. Yeah,
because again, they back to that point about the cost of rent, the percentage it's increased in Columbus was like 10 times more than some of these other cities that they looked at.
Yes, it is.
So like you said, they're trying to stabilize that to where it's not this crazy increase.
And they did it before it was a absolute need too. Like, was you say Minneapolis?
Minneapolis was one of the places they looked at.
And they did it before it was like painful.
Yeah.
Right?
For Columbus right now, it's painful.
It's painful.
It is.
Yeah, and it makes it more expensive the longer you wait.
It's all that supply and demand kind of math. So as soon as you build more, you're gonna have more supply.
Sorry.
That's fine. I messed up the first one. It's about time to someone else do the second one. So
I'm gonna turn on my do not disturb. It's linked to my computer.
Yeah.
So little interruption there.
More work for Danny.
Yes.
Actually, no, it didn't come through on the recording, but it came through on our headphones.
Yes. Oh, okay.
So we should have played it off like the show must go on.
Exactly.
What noise?
What noise?
Yeah.
Yeah. Keep rolling.
Yeah. All right. So what do we got? Where were we at?
We're talking about zoning, how it's actually reshaping, how we actually responding. We are looking at the trends that are happening in Minneapolis, I guess, how they have went through this painful phase.
Yeah. So this is actually in effect now, and they said, Paul, did they mention like future meetings for us 10-2? There was actually quite a few people there, so I feel like the community is getting involved, and there is a dialogue going along.
Are there investors there as well?
I can't actually. I mean, I was there.
Oh, okay. No, that's good. So that's good.
They've been having meetings. Yeah, I think like every month or every couple of months they have like meetings and they have updates to the materials. And if you have feedback, Nino, there's a thing online you could look up Zone In and actually provide feedback on some of this stuff. Things are not.
It's a transparent.
Yeah,
it's a transparent.
And things are not locked in yet, but I think they're getting close to where they're a lot of this stuff has been finalized somewhat.
And
that's why we have the map now. That's why we have the different zones identified.
The purpose of this podcast is I know it's available and transparent. We just have to encourage people to go there and then just inform themselves, And they also have to be like, I'm seeing really nice material in front of us, pretty visual and simple to digest. So that's a good step in the right direction as well.
Yeah, but they've been having meetings and outreach, and so I mean, a lot of people are aware, investors, members of the community.
And guess what? All these variances just make them too busy too. They want to actually just expedite the process as well, and going to the variance process is just painful for them.
It's also cost. I mean, this is done with tax dollars.
Yes,
taxpayers' money.
Is.
So I mean, like, if we can free up that time for them to focus on,
you have to go through the hearing and all this stuff. It's
Paul and I have. I mean,
it's a time-consuming thing.
We're going to hearings every couple of weeks now.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's definitely something that I think is gonna, when it trickle over into like some of these strictly residential developments, that's a different conversation. But these main corridors, this is a must. This is long overdue. So I'm really excited about it.
And I believe me, in 10 years, this is going to be just more dense at map.
Oh yeah,
it's this it's just you're going to have more colors on that map.
Yeah, this is going to, and I think because of Columbus' tremendous growth, a lot of people are looking at us right now.
Yeah,
and this is going to be a case study in itself. For other growing cities.
If it starts growing like in this rate, they're going to start thinking about new alternative transportation, maybe go underground. I'm telling you that.
I think that's a great idea.
That's probably going to have, you're going to have in 10 years initiatives to have a subway in Columbus.
I think we need to wait to see what happens with the automobile and smart, level 5 autonomous driving.
Yes.
Remember the last episode I mentioned Mr. How do you say it again? Rimac?
Remitz.
Okay, so
yes,
way off. But anyway, he just released a new design for robotaxis too.
Yes,
which is like you can even rent the thing out as like an office space.
I was actually listening his interview and he said it was like cars are expensive. You don't need to own the car unless you're really car enthusiast. Like a petrol hair or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's just
you want the V16.
Exactly. You want V12 in your garage, but you can
that you have to take to a track to drive in 20 years.
Exactly. and it's maybe over weekends only when it's nice and dry outside. His concept, and I agree on that concept. Like, look how much our money we actually putting on these vehicles. Maintenance. His concept is just like when you need a car, rent a car. Get the car.
I was in Colombia.
And it drives you everywhere.
It drives you everywhere, yeah.
So I was in Medellin, and they have about 5 million people in Medellin, Colombia. Beautiful city, by the way. And they obviously they haven't got nowhere in the world have we figured this smart cars out yet, right? The autonomous vehicles, but they're at the stage now where the roads are so congested because it's a mountain city.
Yeah, I know.
So it doesn't have this amazing infrastructure that Columbus has.
I remember from Escobar movies what the Medellin looks like.
So with 5 million people driving through these mountains in this jam-packed city, you have a permit that on your license that says you can only drive certain days.
Yes.
So like
many overcrowded city have that. Yeah.
Which is problematic. I mean, that's their solution, and it has reduced. It's still busy. The streets are still congested.
Yeah, I know.
It's like London. You can go in, but you have to pay like a fee, and it's all to
if you go to this certain area. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. So I think this. That's why I'm like, yes, I do want self-driving vehicles because I think it's going to help really alleviate a lot of problems.
Well, already, I mean, they say like 30-some thousand households don't have cars.
Exactly.
They don't even have a car that they own.
And even they will make their life easier, honestly.
And if we're talking about zoning and not having this parking requirement, this is a great first step on at least this type of marriage between more housing, more,
Yeah, it's ridiculous. If you have these people that don't own a car and yet you're forced to design to have a parking space for them, It's ridiculous. You're designing a space for nothing.
And do you know what I think that autonomous car will take the presence? Because first, A is almost like a more costume-based kind of type of vehicle. You don't have to go into the stations, wait for a giant bus to come in. It's gonna take the lane and stuff. It actually can take you to point A to B instead of from the station to station.
But they also talked about multimodal transportation with these cars that Matt was talking about, where literally it picks you up from one stop, and then you take the train, and when you get off the train, you get in another car.
Exactly. I'm not in the mood today to travel with 10 people. I'm in the mood to travel by myself. And I'm gonna get this autonomous car, or we can share the like a cost, and 3 of us can go and we already have some plans. That's a flexibility the new modern peoples are looking for. You know what I'm saying?
We're all different, and I think some options are super important.
That's a good, but you're still gonna need. You still like in a big cities, and this city is gonna become big.
Multiple types of transportation.
Correct.
Absolutely.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. I mean, can you imagine New York City without subway?
No.
Jesus Christ.
No, it was the only thing I used for almost 10 years.
Yeah.
I didn't take taxis.
Yeah.
It's too expensive. I had to take a train.
Exactly.
I drove into Manhattan, I think, twice. And after the first time, I was like, never again. And the second time, I was like, basically forced
I drove to Nick to Queens, and I was like, this was the last time I was driving in New York City. I drove to Chicago several times, but New York City is crazy.
No, I have some great memories and some scary memories of the subway. And listen, I don't want to have to be forced to take that every day either. I do want options. So I mean,
exactly. Yeah. Today I'm in a mood to go by myself to point A to B. Let's get this autonomous vehicle.
And it shouldn't be outrageous. It shouldn't be $50 to go down the street.
No, it shouldn't.
Yeah.
Self-sufficient, automated, electric.
Yeah. So I don't know. We'll see how it impacts zoning and the way cities function and all this kind of stuff.
New emerging technologies.
Because I think already they're, like you mentioned with the parking, the way they're adjusting it to this market-driven approach to where you're not forced to build these spaces. I think they're already starting to consider some of these things 10 years into the future, 20 years into the future.
I mean, we're still looking at elevated parks and trams and train stations that take us from city to city.
And AI will actually help that.
Of course.
Because of this curation process, they're gonna figure out tendencies. And they're gonna they're gonna figure out, okay, this part of the town is overcrowded. We have to relieve it because of that good input of information that you're getting.
So this is fun because we kind of went off track, but at the same time, this is all related, and this is also
not off track at all.
This is a conversation piece that certainly should be considered because, again, to get this started, to get this development going, and start solving the problem of the lack of housing, we need to just what is it going to take and to make this work so that we can start this process.
Its city is living organism, like language, like human being, is just way more complex and higher scale.
Yeah.
So,
I do have to say the initiative is great because it doesn't restrict anything.
Yes.
I think the numbers they said...
It gives you flexibility.
Yeah, but the numbers they said, if they left it in place, just looking at housing units that would be coming on the market in the next 10 years, they estimated about 6,000 of those would be built and come into the market with current codes. And because of this initiative and forward thinking, it's like almost 90,000 units is what they're projecting just from this corridor change over the next 10 years.
And once they have the numbers to support that it's working, then the stage 2 and stage 3, it will, this is going to be an exponential thing.
Yeah. Like Nino said, it's this living organism. So removing that restriction will let the city breathe and develop and grow organically as it needs to.
Yeah. And there's going to be neighborhoods that are going to be more that it's going to make more sense to build these larger structures, and that's where they'll go first.
That's where they look how density and the city's officials should be just to control the growth. You know what I'm saying, and shape it in a sense to if they see the initiative something to encourage it, if they see the problems and overcrowding to kind of try to reduce it and govern a little bit more. So and then because why would a very simple question. Why would Upper Arlington be hot spot and neighborhood next to it not that? And that's artificially made the tendency. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And by investing in a neighborhood right next to it, and in doing the intervention, you can actually in 10 years can be new hot spot.
Well, I think one smart thing that Columbus is doing is so for those of you who don't know, Columbus it's a sprawling metropolis, right? At least
it's a metro area.
Yeah.
It's a flat land that is just sprawling.
There's no natural boundaries that's enclosing it, right? So we're kind of growing out.
We're not surrounded by mountains or rivers or things that limit.
Just meadows.
But within Columbus, there are also a lot of cities. Like, so you have Hilliard, Dublin, Upper Arlington, Grove City, Bexley, Whitehall, Groveport, Reynoldsburg, Gahanna, Westerville. Like, they all have their own independent municipalities as well. And then the city of Columbus is talking with all these partners on a certain level on saying, hey, like, these cores are running along our border for the most part. Like, you're still, if you say you're from Dublin, you're still from Columbus, Ohio.
Yes, you are. Yeah.
So I mean, they're talking with these other municipalities on developing these corridors as well, and these are shared boundaries.
They are municipality, and I call them neighborhoods. For them, they're all neighborhoods.
Yeah, because you go on one side of the road, you're in Dublin, and you go on the other side, and you're in Columbus.
So these numbers that we're seeing, it's going to have more compounding effects than what we're actually just looking at. It's going to affect all these other municipalities too.
They're gonna recognize the tendencies. They're gonna accept the good tendencies, and they're gonna kind of discourage the bad one, and just gonna let the city run the first.
And for me, I'm investing on these borders because oh my gosh, we're right along Upper Arlington right here. It's a hot market. I don't have the restrictions of Upper Arlington.
But you know what? Cities also see what's happening in these neighborhoods.
Yes.
They see what smart decision Dublin is doing. And how they actually encouraging like this walking distance and activating the public areas.
Bridge Park.
Exactly. So that's like this is the dialogue that needs to happen in a city.
Yeah. Well, and I love when people take those chances and those risks and are successful with it, because then people are like, oh, we need to do this too. This is working.
That's why private initiative is very important, because private initiative is the one who's taking risk.
Yeah. And again, tax abatements and corporate, support is huge to make that happen.
Yeah. The way of the past, all these zoning people and city officials, they never got together and talked about everything. But I think now we've reached the point where it's critical that everybody is on the same page. I know with the Intel investment stuff, there was a presentation I went to, and again, they were talking about
was that Coin?
It was not Coin. It was an AIA event, but they were talking about the impact of housing and how they had to start an initiative to gather all these different individuals that have responsibility within these jurisdictions to come together and actually have a conversation in the same room. Yeah. Because a lot of times they're in their box and they're doing stuff in their box, and they're not thinking about their neighbor across the street. So when they started talking about that at the presentation, I was like, thank goodness. You have to have that collaborative
have to get engaged.
Approach.
Yes,
that just goes back to working together. You're just going to do so much more.
I'm going to give you this good example for this giant hospital we're building. It's like we have a bi-weekly meeting with the city officials. And it's such a good meetings, honestly. And you almost like demystify the role of the plan examiner or like a fire marshal. They're just like humans, and you see the majority of the problems are in miscommunication, misunderstanding of their comments. It's a written thing. Sometimes and the code is like many instances is code is depend on how you understand and like how you understand the code.
Sure, it can
interpretation,
be interpretation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it was like having this constant dialogue. It's very, very important and a key. And speed up the process, makes everybody sleep better, and it's a good initiative to go.
So what's the overall message here on what we got? Should we invest and move to Columbus?
Especially in corridors, because that's coming first.
Yes.
I'm already looking at a couple of them.
Yeah.
Honestly, yeah.
So, I mean,
it's phased. They're going to do different areas over time. So, obviously, if you maybe there's others that are probably looking at corridors now as well to make investments. So, maybe that's a little too hot in terms of like what you get for your money.
But also,
but I mean, the whole city is going to eventually. This is just phase one.
Yeah.
So the whole city,
especially any like a younger investors, I will actually look in this map. I will first understand what tendencies are, and we see on this map. I will actually go to this neighborhood and look what is the existing stock there.
Yeah.
And see, because at the beginning you probably don't have money to build a brand new building, but what is the existing stock and how you can actually in that existing stock reuse it, do some adjustments and respond to these changes, maybe get some like help from the government, like with this the affordable housing, and start on a I don't want to call a hype train. I'm just like
also
help yourself and help the environment around you.
I agree completely. And when the local municipality has their heads wrapped around it properly, there's funding available on a federal level. So,
exactly.
But they're not going to give their money.
They call it initiatives. Yeah.
They're going to give it to people who have a plan and who are doing it right.
So I'm telling, like, I think the good next step, even for you, Nick, and for us, it's actually drive these corridors and just like scan the existing building stock and see, oh, this can be reused for something cool and doesn't really need that much investment.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So I think that's the next step.
Yeah.
We need to convert some of this existing stock to awesome residential.
Go ahead of the curve.
Yep.
Yeah.
Call Arcfluence. We'll take care of it for you.
Yeah, exactly. At least give you an advice.
Yeah.
Based on our experience and best practices.
I don't know. I'm excited though. It's
too.
long overdue.
Yes.
Long overdue.
I think that's a first.
Yeah.
First, I mean, after 70 years, keep repeating myself, but long overdue for a city that is expanding tremendously.
Yeah.
Well, again, I've always been on Columbus's side. We moved here. Like, I'm not from Columbus. I am from Ohio, but
I'm from Serbia.
Yeah. But and your list of places, by the way, what are some of the places that you were looking at on your list?
Oh, to live?
Yeah. Columbus obviously is where you ended up, but
I was looking at all the big cities. Like, I wanted to move to Seattle, and we actually put in a bid on a property in Portland, Denver. I love Denver.
Denver is
Austin.
Yeah. Austin is a
even Birmingham was on the list. I love Alabama. It's a beautiful state.
You settled on Columbus primarily because of the opportunity you saw.
There was it was clearly the best place to buy real estate 8 years ago, and it still is. I mean,
it is,
and that was before Intel.
Yeah. Well, before this zoning initiative.
Exactly.
No, the next 20 years for Columbus is very, very promising.
Yeah.
Have you seen Ready Player One?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So,
it's actually happening in Columbus. Yeah.
We need to make it beautiful, but I really think that we're going to be a super hub of.
We will because of that you mentioned that how we are our location is
close to the Great Lakes.
Even right now, look all around, all the news from wildfires, from droughts, from flooding, from earthquakes, tsunamis, like all the different natural. We don't have a volcano. We don't have any of this craziness. Yeah.
Huge bodies of fresh water.
And even tornadoes. Like we're not. Yeah, Ohio has tornadoes, but it's not like Tornado Alley territory.
We are not that far away from Chicago. We're not that far away from New York City.
So if you get in a car, you can drive.
Within
like
a day,
60% of
the population,
total
of the United
country,
States.
Yes,
and into Canada.
Yeah. And there is still plenty of room to invest, and everybody can find its own
it's still affordable, although prices are going up. It's still affordable compared to the coast.
We'll see if this zoning helps stabilize everything.
Yeah, I think in 20 years we're going to look a lot like Chicago, New York.
Oh yeah, I'm telling you, we're going to have subway. If we continue like this, we're going to have a subway lines. Yeah, and it's going to be easy to dig.
And we're going to have some infrastructure that if you live an hour outside of Columbus, you can easily commute 1 or 2 days a week.
Oh my God, I'm dreaming about that, to go to work in downtown, to sit in one of these, whatever, it's carrying me, and I'm just sitting there looking at my iPad. Exactly. And I'm looking in my...
You're working while you're going to your meetings.
I'm preparing for my meeting.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I'm doing. I can prepare myself for a meeting while I'm actually traveling, which I cannot do that now because I have to have my eyes on the road and on a steering wheel.
And if you do want to look up and look out and smell the roses, you're going to see a beautiful landscape of...
Yes.
of buildings along your corridor.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I think this was fun. If you guys have any comments about the zoning, let's see it. Well, this is something we're still learning.
Yeah, can we provide the link for all these materials that Paul downloaded?
Yes.
It's they have a dedicated web page, and they post every time they have updates and meetings where they have like new materials they put out. They have a ton of stuff up there.
Yeah,
and going all the way back through the whole process where they've been working on this.
Especially for our listeners from Columbus area, please get engaged to see what's actually happening in your neighborhood. One of these corridors can be right in your neighborhood.
You might already own a property on this corridor.
And you don't know that.
And
exactly.
You might have got a letter saying that this is changing or has changed.
Exactly. So
we have an update on the Zone In here in Columbus, Ohio. Now that I think we recorded this about a month or two ago, so this is the current update on that
70 year in the progress zoning initiative.
So it was voted on this month and passed.
Last Monday, so a week ago as of today. Passed through the council and 30 days until it goes into effect. And then it's going to be in effect in September. So we basically have a 30-day period where they're just going to button up all the things, and then it's implemented and ready to go for the corridors in Columbus.
That's good enough for me. Actually, real quick on that.
Yeah.
One of our projects we're working on where we had to go through a variance process.
Yeah.
No longer requires that variance.
Yep, because of the new zoning. So, I mean, it's a significant change if you're in one of these corridors, you have a project in one of these corridors. I mean, the way they've rewritten and restructured it, it completely changes everything. So before, if you had to go through a variance process, now it's probably not the case at all. So, I mean, you'd still have to look at it and look at what the code is. But, I mean, huge change for these areas in the city.
All right, well, that will wrap up this episode. This was fun, you guys. And we will see you in 2 weeks.
Let's go to Woods.
Let's go to Woods.
Let's go have that awesome food that Danny's going to make.
This has been the Arcfluence Podcast. As always, you can get more information and additional content on arcfluence.com. Please subscribe on the platform of your choice and leave us a review. We'd love to hear from you.